Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aspetillo.ai. And with me today, I've got John Baldoni, and we're going to be talking about his book, Leadership in Verse, Poems and Stories. And it's so John has actually written a book of poetry, which is quite interesting. And we're actually going to get him to read some of these poems. John, where can people find information about you?
Well, thank you, Tim. They can find it at my website, which is johnbaldoni.com. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn. And all of my books are available on Amazon and Amazon worldwide, I will say.
Yes. So, John, a business book on poetry. What was the inspiration behind that?
I can give you the flip answer, and I got tired of writing long books. Actually, I had written quite 15 books, if you will, and I was intrigued with the idea of getting my message out in a different way. And my first book of poetry, which was called Grace Notes, was a series of reflections on what leaders could do in times of crisis, i.e. the COVID pandemic we all lived through. This book addresses, I think, the issues that we face and also what we can do about them. And I augmented it with stories. But poetry is that thing that can cuts to the quick, which is a phrase I'm borrowing, I'm sure, from some poet of English heritage, if I will say. But I think poetry can do three things, and it's reflect, recharge, and enable us to rethink. And because we communicate in a very pithy way, those things are possible.
So you've written 16 leadership books, but you jokingly admitted that you turned to poetry because you were lazy and didn't have another 200-page book in you. Joke aside, what did poetry allow you to say about corporate life that prose, simple, couldn't quite squeeze out?
It enabled me to distill what I see. I'm an observational poet, and I interpret what I'm seeing. So this is not documentary, but it enabled me to take a snapshot. And sometimes it's better to take a snapshot than a long tome. So I think brevity was really the answer, and it just allowed me to explore things and probably inject more of my own feeling into what I was writing.
Is it as Churchill said it, or Mark Twain said it, or they probably both said it about I'm sorry I wrote you a long letter. Was it that I didn't have time to write a short one or something?
Yeah, I think it was Churchill.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, as we quite often say in business, that less is more.
Yes, but we often err to the more.
Yeah.
So I began my career as a speech writer, so I was accustomed to being brief, even though some of my clients wanted to add more and more and more. But I learned the art of getting to the point quickly. So
your first poems actually came from a glitch where they were left justified video transcriptions during COVID that just looked like poems. When you stared at that accidental layout, what was the exact moment when you realized, wait, this isn't a bad transcript, this is art?
Well, thank you for calling it art. I would, but I appreciate that pat on the back. Just when it turned up left justified and very short. And I said, this is a poetic form. And I started reading it, and I manipulated some of the text. And I said, these are thoughts that are worth sharing in print form as opposed to originally in video form. So it gave a little bit of space and running room or length to what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Another avenue of exploration.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see how that came about, and why you decided to go down the track of poetry. And I'm hoping that maybe this podcast can actually inspire somebody else to do that.
Well, thank you. in fairness, probably the best known poet who writes about business issues is David White, a fellow Briton, but lives in the US. But of course, when you think about it, there's a guy named Homer, and of course, Shakespeare, Henry V, King Lear. So many of his poems, so much of what he wrote was in poetic form, but it was leadership studies. So I cannot call myself original. So.
Yeah, Macbeth, yeah. In the review of your book, it mentions that you use poetry to strip away corporate that mask a workplace rot. What is your absolute least favorite corporate buzzword right now, and why does poetry destroy it?
Well, I don't know if it's the least corporate, but vibe perhaps. And unfortunately, I use it myself. But it becomes that all-purpose word that we think we know what it means, but do we really? And I think the idea of jargon, Tim, is often to dissemble or to shade on it, or so we don't really have to address the right issue, or we don't have to be so specific. And the thing about poetry is it's very specific. I did an interview with Deborah Paredes, who is a poet and teaches at Columbia University here in New York. And she talks about the specificity of poetry. I'm a retired executive coach, and the same thing applies to coaching. If you're going to be coaching, you have to be specific to help folks focus, and poetry does that focus.
Let's look at a piece of your poetry. You have a poem called Fareham, which tackles the brutal, cold reality of modern downsizing. Would you mind reading that to us right now and tell us what the real world observation that sparked it?
Well, I actually heard this word. It was a friend of a friend was talking about layoffs, and I'll let the poem speak for itself.
Yeah.
Now they just fire them, he said. Used to provide severance, no more. They just cut them, kind of like pro football, except they don't get hurt, at least on the outside. On the inside, it's a different matter. Been working 10, 15 years, then out on their asses. That hurts. Some of them find work real fast, others not so fast. Regardless, they don't bounce back so easy. They feel left out, and they are. None of them did anything to deserve it. They were good workers, some of the best. Yeah, it's different now. They just fire them. So
there you go. Okay. So what was tell us the real world observation that sparked that then?
Well, I think we're seeing this right now with layoffs and many due to AI or whatever, and they're often done callously and without much care. It's just sort of a decision that doesn't come out of the blue, but they just let people go in en masse, and there's no consideration for the humanity of it. Now, obviously I've been around for a long time. You have too. We've seen many rises and falls in employment. That's part of our system, our management and capitalist system. But I'm seeing an edge to it now, which is there's a sense of loss of humanity, if you will. And so that's what that poem is trying to get to. Now, anybody who gets laid off, it doesn't mean that their boss is cruel. I don't mean it that way. But so often the way corporate does it in a corporate way, it's cold and clinical. And that makes people feel less than human. That's what this poem is about. So.
After that reading, your poem points out that unlike football players, laid off workers don't get hurt on the outside. It's all on the inside. How can an executive use a poem like this as a practical tool rather than just a sad reflection?
Well, this is where we get into the second point of my little adage about reflection and then recharge or rethink as maybe if I have to do this, how can I do it better? And I always tell a story about a friend of mine who had been a very senior executive in pharma and had been through many layoffs, and he was the one having to announce it. And he said that the thing is that you have to be honest and you have to do what you can. It's never easy, but telling the truth. And corporately try to provide some kind of severance, whatever, or a package, or find people, help find them other work, outplacement things. And a lot of companies do that. But it's still, when you get laid off, even if it's, you're just part of it, you feel, well, it's a hit on your ego. And some people will take it harder than others. And there's a psychic damage to it. So.
You write about our obsession with movie style transformations, the swelling music, the dramatic hero shot. Why is the Hollywood expectation actually dangerous for real life leaders managing messy organization change?
Well, change is a mantra within organizations. It's always there, and we embrace change as long as it doesn't affect us, Tim. That's great. But it's part of human nature. It's part of biological systems. We're always in a system of change. But I think so often when change initiatives are pitched, the rosy side is accented over the hard work side. So I wanted to have a little fun with it. And so I wrote this poem, Transformation.
So would you mind reading Transformation for us, John?
I'd be happy to. So often in the movies, there's a moment when the hero, facing impossible odds, suddenly decides to take action. The camera pulls back, and the music crescendos, revealing the hero standing tall. Hurrah! We smile, secretly hoping to hear that same music.
There you go. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Your book structure moves from diagnosis to discipline, but your tools aren't KPIs or spreadsheets. They are virtues like solitude and humility. How does a hyper-busy manager practice solitude when their calendar is double booked from 9 till 5?
Well, I will tell you the advice that was told to me 30 plus years ago when I first started writing by a wonderful executive, Skip LaFoe, who was a senior executive at General Motors. And Skip was the gentleman who pioneered the brand Saturn, which no longer exists, but he was just a remarkable executive. And he wrote a piece about reflection. And I was interviewing him and I said, Skip, you're a busy guy. How do you make time for reflection? And he looked at me like I was a bump on a wall, whatever. And he said, you put it on your schedule. So I have shared that advice ad nauseum, particularly with coaching clients, and many do. They do, carve out a period of time. And Skip was also very practical about reflection. He said, you can do it in a dialogue with a trusted partner, and bounce ideas off. And that's really the idea of reflection, back and forth, if you will. But it's that kind of making time to take, to reflect. And there's a little mantra that I have shared, and it comes from a combat experience of a U.S. Army in Vietnam. And a colonel was in a 36-hour firefight, and he was observed to be withdrawing at times from the action. And what he was doing was reflecting. He said he was asking himself, what's happening? What's not happening? What do I need to do to influence the action? Or as I say, the outcome. That little mantra, what's going on, what's happening, that's a pretty quick diagnostic. What's not happening, that takes some think time. How are people motivated? What are our customers doing? All of these types of things. And then what do I need to do? And often what I need to do is to mobilize, to get people to focus or to provide resources for them. So that little mantra, what's happening, what's not happening, what can I do to help, is an important way of reflection. And some people have adopted that in staff meetings. So again, it's a form of reflection, if you will.
I always think it's a good idea to actually book out time, because then you do it, don't you? I saw something about stop doing to-do lists and just put it in your calendar. So that's what I do. So you profile several historical figures in the book, like Lincoln and Jimmy Carter, as examples of character formed through suffering. Why do you think modern corporate culture is so terrified of showing or admitting to suffering?
Well, because it's perceived as a sign of weakness. When you share that, you are showing vulnerability, but you're doing it with a sense of strength. And that issue crosses into the mental health area. We are, shining a brighter light on mental health and the fact that if we ask for help, it's not a flaw. You need to do it for yourself, and from a leadership point of view, it's good for your team. So again, you can flip it and say it's not about you; it's about what the team needs. The team needs you to optimize. So it's up to every individual how much they wish to share about their background, it's often what I find in a positive sense is when during mentoring. Senior executives will say, Tim, when I was your age, kind of jokingly say, here's what happened to me. I ran into this roadblock and I thought I had all the answers. And you know what? I didn't. And so that's a moment of vulnerability. That's a moment of sharing. And that gives that person being mentored or being coached the permission to, hey, that's happened to me. Do you think this could happen? So I think the more open we are about certain things, it opens the door to communication. And what it really comes down to, Tim, is what we're all looking for. It's connection, a connection with one another. So,
you quote poet Deborah Parody as saying, poetry insists on a specialty to talk about grand themes. If you had to pick one highly specific, tiny habit that proves a boss is leading with grace rather than authority, what is it?
Oh, I would. It's something that we would feel. We know how. Getting back to the example of Skip LaFoe, he touched people in ways by being there, by how he communicated, how he listened, and demonstrating a true interest in other people. I knew a senior executive who's a former Marine general who would go around the office and make small talk with people, but he was specific about it. He would look at someone's cubicle and see a picture of a girl on a horse, and he goes, "Well, how's that young equestrian coming?" Or he would go to another place and see that a soccer player, and he says, "How's that soccer player going?" Or as you would say, Tim, football player.
Football, yeah.
So he was engaging them on specific topics, and that demonstrates the sense of, hey, I'm a human being, and so are you, and we're connecting, not boss to employee, but person to person. And that's what we're all striving for.
So do you have a favorite poem here, John?
Yeah, I think I'll pick one out, and it's from I'm lunching off the Irish poet who left us much too soon, and it's called May the Blessing. If I may read, would you like me to read that?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. May the Blessing. Philosopher poet John O'Donohue wrote reams of poems. Many were blessings, as befit his previous priestly calling. Each line of his blessings begins with May. May you think free. May you feel the ground. May you know you are loved, and so forth. May is the intercession between mother and child, pastor and parish, leader and follower. May is a door opener, invoking, as it say, "Are you listening, Lord?" or to whomever you are addressing. May is a kind word, an invitation, as the French would say, to parler, to have a conversation with a higher power up there or a higher power down here. May is a good word, one full of grace, smiling as I write this. As children, we asked intercessions from Mary, full of grace. May we all find more mays. May the light snuff out the dark. May despair lose to hope. May sorrow drown in joy. May.
That's wonderful, John. Thank you.
you.
Final question. To wrap this up, if a listener watcher is currently sitting in the car at their desk feeling completely burnt out by the hustle culture of their job, what is the one poem or historical figure from your book you should look up to tonight to get their bearings back?
Well, I would defer to Abraham Lincoln because there is a man who led with compassion, faced with great adversity in his own personal life, but also held our nation together at its moment of peril. But he never lost his humanity. And even in the darkest days of the Civil War, he made time to tell stories. He was an inveterate storyteller. He loved stories. Went to the theater. Sadly, shouldn't have gone that one last time.
Yes.
But he loved to entertain and hear stories and make jokes. And often he was the butt of those jokes. So I think, and I find great, and he knew the cost of war. And, he visited the troops. He saw the bloodshed. And he knew it, but in his bones, he felt that this was the right thing. And of course, to end enslavement, which was the great curse on our country at that time. So.
John, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, Leadership in Verse. If I wanted to get a copy of this, where could I get one from?
Well, you can probably order through your bookstores. I know you can order through bookstores, but of course it's on Amazon. But independent bookstores can help you out too. Thank you.
And John, where can we find information about you?
Again, at my website, johnbaldoni.com. And I also post regularly on LinkedIn, and I welcome followers. I also do a newsletter every Sunday, and I post a poem on Fridays.
John, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book and doing a live poetry reading as well. I am honored. Thank you so much for that.
My honor, Tim, and thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you.